Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into the world of renting, moving, housing situations.
Yeah, and we're using a really interesting source today, just one conversation actually, but it's packed with useful stuff about someone facing a sudden move.
Right. So our mission basically is to pull out the keywords, the phrases, the language you actually need if you're dealing with finding a place, moving house, all that kind of thing.
Exactly. We want to decode that practical language that pops up when life throws a housing curveball at you.
It's like a language toolkit for navigating these sometimes tricky situations.
Mhm.
So let's dive into the source conversation. What's the setup? What's happening?
Well, it kicks off with a pretty stressful scenario, honestly. Someone finds out their lease is suddenly up.
Unexpectedly up.
Yeah, exactly. Not like, oh, it's the end of the term I expected. It's up because the owners decided to sell the property.
Ah, okay. And wasn't there something specific about why they were selling or who to?
Yes, and this is the part that kind of stings. The owner is selling it to make way for a parking lot.
Ouch. Not another home, not development, but asphalt.
Pretty much. It just adds this layer of, I don't know, almost absurdity to the whole difficult situation. Your home is becoming pavement.
Yeah, that's rough. So, okay, facing that, what are the immediate problems this person mentions in the conversation? The practical stuff.
Well, the biggest one is time. They have to move, find a new place, and they need to do it ASAP.
ASAP,
Yeah.
right? That acronym says it all, as soon as possible. Real urgency there.
Total urgency, no time to plan really, and that need for speed leads to other things, like needing storage.
Ah, right. Because finding the perfect place ASAP is unlikely.
Exactly. Or maybe the only place available quickly is way smaller. So storage becomes essential.
Okay, and then there was the favor, the slightly unusual favor.
Yes. The friendship test favor. Would you mind looking after my pet tarantula and snake?
Wow, okay. That's not asking someone to water your plants.
Not quite. It definitely raises the stakes for looking after something.
But I thought it was great how the friend reacts. Very supportive,
Mm-hmm.
offering to help pack.
Totally. Offers help packing. Even suggests maybe moving in with parents for a bit, temporarily.
Which is often what happens, isn't it? You lean on your friends, your family.
You really do. And that whole exchange, just those few sentences, are just full of the kind of words and phrases we're talking about today.
Okay, let's break some of those down.
Yeah.
The absolute foundation here seems to be lease.
Definitely. A lease, that's your contract when you rent. It's the formal agreement.
Right, it says you can live there for X amount of time if you pay Y amount of money, usually monthly.
Exactly. Monthly rent, sometimes quarterly. It defines the whole tenant-landlord thing. Totally different from owning, where you'd have a mortgage payment.
And the key phrase linked to it was, my lease is up. What does that signal?
Well, my lease is up basically means the contract period is over. It's finished. Expired.
Like time's up in a game or meeting.
Precisely. The agreed time in that home, under that contract, has run out.
Which leads to the next word, renew, which in this specific case, they couldn't do.
Right. To renew is just to continue the contract. If your lease is up and everyone agrees, you sign on for another term. Renew the lease.
But here, the property's being sold, so no renewal option.
No option. And the source mentions you can renew other things too, like a gym membership, a subscription, a work contract. It just means extending an existing agreement.
Okay, so lease is up, can't renew.
Yeah.
Next step is you have to move in somewhere else.
Right. Move in the act of actually getting yourself and your stuff into a new home, starting to live there.
And the specific example was move in with parents.
Yeah, that with is important. It often implies joining an existing household, maybe temporarily, like in this suggestion,
Yeah.
different from just moving into your own empty apartment.
And before any moving in happens, there's the fun part, pack.
Ah, yes. Packing. Putting everything you own into boxes or bags to transport it.
Books, clothes, dishes, everything.
Everything. The conversation mentions packing boxes for a house move, but also packing a suitcase for a trip. Same basic action. Get stuff ready to go somewhere else.
And we mentioned that urgency, ASAP. Let's just quickly underline that one again.
Yeah, ASAP. ASAP. As soon as possible. It just screams emergency or high priority when you hear it about finding housing.
You see it in work emails all the time, too. It means drop everything.
Pretty much. It means now.
Okay, so that's some core vocabulary. But the conversation also had some really useful phrases we touched on. My lease is up.
Yeah, and it's worth repeating as a complete phrase because it's such a standard way to state that critical situation, contract's over.
And the reason why it was up, that phrase, make way for.
Ooh, yeah, that's a significant one. Make way for, it means clearing space, often demolishing something so something else can be put there.
Like the house being removed to make way for the parking lot.
Exactly. It implies replacement. The source even had that sad little side story about a childhood home being torn down to make way for a bigger house or a mall.
Right. It often implies progress, but sometimes at a cost to what was there before.
Definitely carries that weight.
And then there was the politeness structure used for that.
Yeah.
Difficult pet request. Would you mind? Plus verbing.
Ah, yes, classic polite English. Would you mind looking after my pets? Is so much softer than, can you look after my pets?
Especially when the pets are a tarantula and a snake.
Exactly. It acknowledges you're asking for something potentially inconvenient, or in this case, maybe a bit scary for the friend. Using would you mind is like saying, I know this might be a hassle, but
It dials up the politeness factor significantly.
it really does. It's a go-to for big or awkward favors.
Okay, stepping back a bit, the conversation also got into some wider stuff about living situations, like that suggestion to move back in with parents.
Yeah, and that's something you hear about more and more, isn't it? Especially for younger adults maybe just starting out or hitting a rough patch.
Why is that, according to the source?
Well, the big one is just cost. Economics. Rent is incredibly high in many places. The source mentioned like $1,000 to $2,000 a month, even for small places or sharing in some U.S. cities.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge chunk of income.
It really is. So moving back home, even if it feels like a step back in independence, can be just a practical necessity to save money or figure things out.
And the source touched on cultural differences too, right? About when people leave home.
It did. Contrasting the U.S., where maybe you move out for college, with the example given was Shanghai, China, where it might be more traditional to live with parents until marriage.
So very different timelines and expectations around independence and family living.
Absolutely. Shows how much culture shapes these decisions.
Beyond parents, the source also mentioned benefits of just living with others, roommates maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Shared living has practical upsides. Splitting rent is the obvious one, but also utilities, gas, electric, internet, it all adds up.
Cheaper bills. Maybe share food costs too.
Could do. And it also mentioned the social or emotional side. Living alone for the first time can be kind of daunting for some people. Having roommates can make it feel less lonely or scary.
Yeah, makes sense. Company and shared costs.
Right. And then the conversation kind of wrapped up that thread by mentioning another type of moving in with a partner.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Boyfriend, girlfriend moving in.
Which the source called a big step, a big commitment.
Definitely feels like a relationship milestone.
Yeah, the source even had that playful line about it being like, the step before marriage, it signals things are serious. You're merging lives, finances, space.
It's a different level of shared living.
For sure.
So bring this all together for you, the listener. Why is knowing all this vocabulary in these scenarios useful?
Well, because moving, finding housing, figuring out who to live with, these are pretty universal parts of life, right? Sooner or later, you or someone you know will probably deal with this stuff.
Yeah, whether you're the one packing boxes, or you're helping a friend who got that leases up notice, or you're considering roommates.
Exactly. This deep dive gives you the language to understand those conversations, to talk about your own situation clearly, or just to grasp what someone else is going through.
It helps you decode the practicalities and sometimes the stresses of it all.
We've covered the basic building blocks: lease, renew, pack, ASAP. We looked at key phrases like my lease is up and make way for, and even polite requests.
And we touched on those bigger themes: the economics of rent, moving back home, cultural views, the pros and cons of shared living, and moving in with a partner, all from that one conversation.
It really shows how one event, like a lease ending unexpectedly, can ripple out into so many areas of life: money, family, relationships, independence.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with, thinking about everything we've discussed.
Yeah, consider the whole journey of housing across a lifetime. That first move out from your parents' place, maybe needing to circle back later, the decisions about roommates, taking that leap to live with a partner. These are all major transitions.
And think about the role friends play the support network. Offering help, a couch to crash on, or maybe even agreeing to look after some. Very unusual pets in a pinch.
It highlights how interconnected our lives and our living situations often are.
Definitely something to keep in mind. Keep these words, these ideas handy. They're part of the language of life.